Today's podcast is brought to you in part by Manning Publications. If you use the discount code YTFisher at checkout, you'll get 40% off my Docker in Motion course. It is 5.5 hours long and it teaches the fundamentals of Docker. Go to howtocodewell.net/Docker in Motion to get my course or other video courses and books from Manning Publications. Link in the description below. Hello coders and welcome to another How to Code Well podcast. Today we're going to be talking about web development consultancy and web development in business. I have the pleasure of being joined by Sam Foote. Hi Sam, how are you going? Good week?
Hi Peter, yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, good week so far.
Excellent.
On here.
Whereabouts are you based in the UK? In Brighton?
I'm down in, usually sunny Bournemouth. Yeah, so not too far from you.
That's Bournemouth's a great place. I was in Bournemouth a few weekends back taking the dog out for a walk. He loves the beach.
Bournemouth Beach and all the way along the coast really. It's just, it's all mostly sand. It's well looked after, that's for sure.
Awesome. So you're the managing director of Apptimise. That's the right way of saying it, right? Apptimise?
Correct,
awesome.
Yes.
So before we get into the Apptimise stuff, let's talk about your background. So how did you get into coding?
Okay, so originally when I was a teenager, I was big into gaming, LAN parties, every weekend, playing games. And I think that's where my sort of interest in computing came from, building computers, networking, that sort of thing. And then the coding aspect of it really came from, I was trying to think back of when I originally first made my first ever, program. And I think it was a script for a multiplayer game server. I think that's what it was, right? Like a bash script or something to get something to run, Yeah. And I think inadvertently that sort of started my, I've always been a builder and a tinkerer, and I think that, software is, it's using computers to build things and you get that instant feedback. So I think for me, it ticks a lot of those boxes. So I think my personal nature of building and tweaking, and obviously when I started coding, ever since it's just been growing and growing and growing, right? So it was a good career path at the time. So it just made sense for me to sort of move into that. I think if I hadn't have gone into coding, it would have been more IT administration, and that's what a lot of my friends do. Okay. I've got a lot of friends that are like IT administrators. So that sort of aspect really.
So is that more working on the hardware than the software?
Yeah. So like setting up hardware configurations, networks and things like that. And I think, there's huge amount of sort of opportunity in that field as well. But I think I just sort of slid into the software side because I wrote too many scripts than I should have done back in the day, basically.
Wonderful. What did you do before it? What did you do before coding?
I've never had another professional job other than coding. Obviously had my part-time work that I did sort of on this, whilst I was at school and college and things like that. And I actually, I started coding straight from college. I never went to university. Right. I was lucky enough to have my, then soon to be first employer came in and said, hey, who wants a junior job? And, and that was the time like everybody was doing their UCAS applications and applying for universities and things like that. And nobody else even applied for it. And I was the only one that went for it. Yeah. I ended up getting a degree. I ended up finishing through the Open University with Bournemouth University as well. So I did it sort of, I learned on the job as I went, if you see. So I had loads of friends that went to university and now are programmers, but I just went about it in a slightly different way. Part laziness on my part, because it's easier to get a job. But, what I learned in those, what I learned in that first job stuck with me sort of ever since. It was the foundations of my, me learning to code.
Sure. Brilliant. So you did a course at college, right? That was coding. Is that
right?
So
I actually did a BTEC, and a BTEC, for anybody not in the UK, is it's kind of a more vocational qualification. There are no exams. It's just coursework based, and you just do projects. And I don't know about it now, but back when I did it, it was definitely the inferior way to go, really. In terms of academia, it's, you're not going to go to a prestigious university with a BTEC. But what that did is I actually did software development day in, day out at college, and at that time, that was just more exciting to me than going, and doing maths and physics, which is, maths, physics, then into comp science, and that's just the path that I didn't take at that time.
So what kind of things were you learning at uni?
So whilst I did uni 1 day a week, and I didn't really learn a lot because I was programming day to day. So that was more of it was just something I felt I needed to do. Sure. And to be honest with you, looking back at it in my specific scenario, which is different to everybody else's, is that university degree was kind of pointless, really, because and that's hard for me to say. It wasn't pointless at all, but it's the amount of experience that I had when I finished my university. Now, jobs that I got after that point, they didn't even look at. They just wanted to know if I could code and what level I could code at, what projects had I been working, what was my experience. So you get to this point where you're a senior developer or, and it doesn't really matter what you did at university, because university is there to just prepare you for, in my opinion, for the real world.
Sure. No, I totally agree. I mean, the conversations I've had recently with recruitment agents, they don't ask about the university stuff. There's no need. They want to know what I coded last week. Yeah, exactly. And I think the thing for me is back at that point, the people like my parents, my parents had at that point very different opinions about, university and, how prestigious that was. And they, they would have wanted me to go to university 100%. Right. And it does definitely, if you've never been to university, up to a certain point, that's going to lock you out a specific employer. I don't think so much now, but back then it was different. It wasn't like it is now. There's definitely a shortage of programmers. So it's like, can you do the job? Yes. Are you a human? Yes. Yes, we'll give it a try, So I think it's not that simplistic, obviously, but it's not so much what Russell Group University did you go to and what grade did you get and all of those different things nowadays. Well, in my, and again, this is all my perspective in my very narrow viewpoint of my little place in the world, if you see what I mean. It's, that's just how I've never had an interaction where somebody's gone, oh, you didn't go to XYZ university. No. No.
But then again, I haven't worked in a conventional role like that for a while. So, yeah.
Sure. So, okay. So after that, where did you take it from there? You say you got a job somewhere. Yeah.
So, where I learned, so I left college and I went straight into a junior developer job doing .NET. And I basically, the company was split over 2 sites. One was in Bath and one was down where I lived at that time in Weymouth, down in Dorset. Now, and in Dorset, we had quite a small team. It was just me and one other senior developer. And the bigger team was sort of up in Bath. And I basically had free reign of the senior developer teaching me, everything I needed to know. And, I'm still really good friends with him. He taught me to properly code, and I worked in the defense sector. So the environment in which you work in is very controlled, and you don't have the luxuries. Well, and especially back then, especially old .NET, as I call it, that was a very different time and a very different world. So it was really good, programming principles and underpinning, but it was quite boring and monotonous work, right? It was, sort of boring web systems, building things, and like I just alluded to back then, I don't want to don't want to hate on Microsoft at all because I absolutely love them, but .NET was in a very different place, right? It was very locked down. You could only run it on Windows, and the transformation that they've made in recent years just wasn't there back then. So yes, it was the best part about it for me was I was taught the real underpinnings of how to build proper, like, enterprise ready software. Okay. And I didn't understand it all, security testing and, building it in a scalable way that it can be extended upon, but also it was a consultancy firm. So it was like an agency. So I had to do many different things, and there was always a deadline with money. There was always a budget attached. Right. And I think, personally, every developer should have that in there, throughout their experience, because you just see the world in a completely different place when you only have X amount of days or weeks to produce something, right? And there is a profit margin to be made for that company. So
time equals money, and it's the whole sort of, if your code is not up to scratch, then it's going to cost money in the future for it to be fixed.
100%. And I think that that sort of commercial aspect of it. And back then I didn't even see it, right? Like I wish I could go back to that point in my life and not, I don't have any regrets, but go back and tell old Sam, what I should be doing. And hindsight is obviously 2020. So, but, and that's it. So that's where I sort of started from. And there were I think there were some mid-level devs, but most of them were all senior. Right. So if we didn't have, like, it wasn't agile. We didn't have stand-ups every day. But when we did come together, you just get that breadth of, knowledge, right? You have, you have some people driving new technology in, and then you've got these people that have been doing it for years, and not in a critical way. They're just saying, well, what about X, Y, and Z? And those are all the questions that you learn over time, right? All the mistakes that you've made over time. And,
definitely.
All that wisdom.
All the little edge cases, all the little things, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? What happens if this happens, and all this stuff. Yeah.
And that's a really, like, productive environment, because it can be a bit slow at times, and everybody has an equal opinion. But it's just getting all of those viewpoints is sometimes a really good thing, especially when you're, like, architecting a piece of software.
Well, this is something that I think you just can't really get at university. It's that having the exposure to other developers who've been in the trenches.
I've through one of my sort of contracts that I've done, I was working with placement students in their third year of university, and those developers will pass a technical test, not a problem, but they haven't set up, like, they've never deployed something to a server or set up Plesk or whatever the random things a client asks you to do. It's all of those edge. In that environment, everything was Dockerized. So no university that I know of teaches Docker, right? So who knows? At some point, I'm sure they will. But teaching them why Dockerized development environments are really important, because, well, it's just time. We don't use it in development for anything else other than repeatability and time. So so when we onboarded those placement students, they would just be given free rein to learn all of the the technical development, all of our environmental things first. It's like, I don't really care about whether you can code or not. Like that can come with time. It's more we already know that they can code because they've been taught code for 2 years at university, but it's about, deploying things securely, safely, and thinking about the whole software development lifecycle, not just writing back-end code, because that's not the lovely world that we live in. I wish my job was just writing back-end code, all day, every day, because then there would be nothing. It's a nice isolated environment, isn't it?
So from there, where did you go? Did you go straight into working at Apptimise, or was there anything in between?
No, so I had another job. So after my first job, I then went and worked for a healthcare company, and I built a sort of their global e-commerce platform. They were sort of a B2B supplier, and back in those days, the cloud wasn't really what it is now. I say those days, it wasn't that long ago, but it wasn't where it is now. They didn't have the money to buy a big ERP system, so they built everything bespoke. And so we did that. I was there for 3 years. We built that all up and everything. And and that was pure .NET, bespoke application development. Not maybe the way that you would go now, but back then it was completely functional for what it was. But again, a really small development team. There was only a designer and 3 developers there. It wasn't, well, it's still pretty big compared to like a freelancer, right? But so not a huge team. Did 3 years there, and then towards the end of that, I started to do freelance work on the side. That became far too much because I was just doing it every night and every weekend. I sort of traded my gaming for freelancing, which worked well financially, but it didn't work well in any other aspect of my life. So I just made the decision. My wife, who was my girlfriend then, basically gave me the best ultimatum ever. She was like, "You either do it full time or you stop." We need that.
I think us freelancers need that reality check.
Because it's great, earning as much money as you possibly can, but you have to have that balance, even if you don't. Like at that stage of my life, my daughter wasn't here. It was just me and my wife, but it's still, burnout is a real thing. If you do every single evening, every single weekend, you will. For me personally, I will eventually crash. So it's about doing it, safe. Nothing's really unsafe about programming, but in a safe manner that is got longevity to it, right? It's got to work for the long term for everyone. So I made the jump. I was working with a couple of agencies on the side, so I had plenty of. At the time, I already had like 2 or 3 clients that were regularly giving me little bits, and some of the work wasn't even really little. We were doing loads of work, to get stuff done.
May I just spin it back a bit? How did you come up with the idea in the first place of wanting to go freelance?
I think to start off with, I did a couple of projects through sort of friends and family. So I had I did some work for one of my dad's friends, and little bits like, can you make me a website, and all of those. But I'm no way a designer at all, right? So I'm definitely a developer, that's for sure. You don't want to ask me about my design opinion. I'm not very good at that. So I would help people with little bits like that, and then one day I think I got a LinkedIn from somebody, and he was basically like, I've got some, and he was the owner of an agency, and he's like, I've got a small little bit of work. And I was quite flexible with that company that I worked for. I didn't actually work. It was like a 34-hour week. It was amazing. And so I used that extra time. And I basically said to him, look, I can't do it full time, but if you've got any projects that, aren't time sensitive or they're small, then, send them my way. I'd be happy to work on them. So I did a few projects with them, and it just started to snowball from there. Because once you've got a client and you've delivered value and you're trustworthy, especially with agencies, they always want everything done in house first, but they invariably have a little bit that they need to sub out to somebody else, right? Agencies are a good way to get some reliable work. It's not potentially the best value work, but there's definitely a supply of extra work there.
Yeah, you're essentially being subcontracted out, aren't you? You're working as a developer on their team, but for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you're sort of as and when you're needed. But I think the problem that a lot of people have, is how do you find that first one, right? Like, how do you get that connection? And I think, looking back on it, I didn't do anything to get that connection, right? It was just pot luck that me and that person started to talk. But if you were to actively sort of hunt for that, I think it's more about being known. And one thing I'm going to be critical of myself, and I will be critical throughout this whole thing about myself. Mm-hmm. One thing I'm not very good at is marketing myself, right? I don't do any social, I don't do anything like that. Mm-hmm. And I think just being available and open to opportunities, but then you have to be connected with the person, right? They have to know who you are, because there's loads of amazing coders out there that, that want work, but just nobody knows who they are or what they do, right? Because they don't go to meetups, or they don't go to, and people just don't know about them. And I think that's just being known. Like, I think that's the only way, to really, and it is slow, right? It's like it's a cumulative effect, right? Everything in life is, if we take YouTube, for instance, right? Let's talk about your 10,000, followers, subscribers. I can't remember. Yes, subscribers. It's not. You don't just wake up tomorrow with 10,000 subscribers, do you? No. It's you've got to build it up, and I think that's the same analogy that you would, in terms of your brand. If you don't, I don't really like to call it brand because it's quite a wafty term, but like, your brand is your trustworthiness, and your trustworthiness and your deliverability. Like, does Sam turn up on time? Does he do the job he says he's going to do? Is he flexible? If we ask him to do a deployment late at night, will he shift around his day to do it? And all of those different things. I think that all makes up your personal brand, and however people discover your brand might just be through word of mouth and referral.
Did you always think that you wanted to be a freelancer?
Yes, that's the reason why I went freelance is because I couldn't leave the question unanswered of whether I could do it or not. So for me, it was like the what if, right? So the worst thing that was going to happen to me, because I had prepared for it financially, is that I would lose 3 or 6 months worth of money. Right, that's the short and tall of it. Mm-hmm. But on the flip side of that, I would have gained 3 or 6 months worth of knowledge. So actually, yes, it would have been an expensive mistake, but at least you would be able to close that door on your life. Do you see what I mean? Like, that's not for me, or that doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I like that. I really do. That's such a pragmatic way of looking at it.
And I think, but I think if you're, I've done a few things where I've made decisions to go and do things, and as long as you do it in a structured way, even though it seems absolutely mental, right, to some people, especially people that do have full-time jobs. A lot of my friends, I don't know, in my close friendship circle, I've got no other contractors, self-employed, whatever you want to call them. I've got no other people that run their own businesses that are in tech, like in software development that I am. Right. So it's just a different mindset. Well, you know it because you do it. So it's the thrill of not having any stable income, right? Like that's that's it entirely. It's the and that sounds absolutely nuts, right? Because I have a wife and a child, right? Like that sounds like you're gambling, with your future. But what I also do have is, I have confidence in myself that I can go out there and do. I haven't always had confidence in my ability, right? Everybody goes through that, don't they? Imposter syndrome, and can I do this? Can I get this business to work? But actually, everybody's already got the technical ability, don't they? And that's ultimately what you're selling. So as long as you've, as long as you've got that technical ability, then if you allow that to be shown to your clients, then that's what will drive you forward, right? You're delivering, you're not, right? I think a lot of people focus on sales, and how am I going to, how am I going to be the most viral on social media, and how am I going to get in front of these people, when actually what sells you is what you do, and what you say and what you do and how trustworthy you are.
That's definitely really agree with that. With the social stuff, it's people think the numbers are the thing that matter the most. It's not. And with the work, people think that it's a salary. That's the thing that matters the most, and it's not. As long as you don't undersell yourself, right? But like you said, it's the importance of having your own reputation, having your own. I'm going to say it, brand, which you're slowly building up.
Yeah, but I think, and as well, it's just about being content, because I can sit here, because I'm somebody that works for themselves and I've lived in that world for a long time. But as long as you're content and you're happy, like I said, a lot of my friends aren't self-employed, right? Do I think that they're stupid or they're doing the wrong thing? No, because they really enjoy the employers that they work for. They work on really good projects, and they love the fact that they get paid on time every single month, and that's, that to them is, they're content. And when I talk to people, a lot of people ask me like, should I go freelance? Only you can answer that question once you get to that point, right? I can't tell you to do that. I could tomorrow tell you just to quit your job and go off and do it. But that's something that somebody has to, discover for themselves.
So you were picking up all these roles, all these jobs whilst you were working full time, and they were slowly accumulating up over time. At what point did you go, right, enough is enough? That I can't juggle these plates anymore. You mentioned earlier it was your wife who drew the line. Was it at that,
basically,
Was it at that point, or do you think that you could have picked up more?
The main thing was when I was finishing my part-time degree, because I was basically doing my job, a part-time degree, and I was freelancing at the same time. And basically I completed my degree, handed in my dissertation. It was like, that was gone. And it was like, weight off my shoulders, you know what I mean? Because that was, probably a day a week doing that. And I think at that point it was like, and as soon as that had finished, that time got instantly absorbed. Like I didn't, end up playing games for those 8 hours a week or whatever I was doing on that. It was just like, right, you've got more availability, bang, here's some more work, So, and then at that point it was just, I was doing the degree to better myself and to get that, that certificate. And that was an investment in my own future. And then, the freelancing was, we were saving for a house, and that was helping with all of that. So it was just like, do I want to, it's quite interesting. I'm sidetracking a little bit here, but a lot of people ask me like, why do DIY around the house, right? Because, why not just work on a Saturday? And sometimes I really just like not to work on a Saturday, right? Yeah. Like you're probably the same. So yes, I could work a 6-day week and then have people come in and, fix stuff around the house and, make sure my garden looks tidy and things like that. And if you were just to think about it from a pure financial sense, then that's what you should do. You should maximize the hours you work. But actually, Sam, I need more than that. I need variety in my life. Like I need to be able to know how to fix my toilet when it breaks, not because it makes any financial sense for me to fix my own toilet, but it's just another thing that I can do, and I can still be, I can still be effective, like as in I can still do work at the weekends, but it's on something else, which is another part of my life. So I think, that you have to, setting boundaries. I saw something on LinkedIn about, I think it was yesterday, about you should have a start and an end like event to your day if you work from home, if you work remotely, like having those boundaries, like a separate room and a start and an end time, like you're in an office, but you do that. And I think sometimes, and I think at that point, just to bring it back to the original point, I think I was blurring those lines of what was my personal time versus what was billable time.
I've thought about this a lot. So I'm in the office here. It's a spare room in the house. There's nothing in this room that is the house apart from the dog bed. Everything else is what I do. But I still go downstairs in an evening with the laptop.
Yeah. So the way that I get around this now is I actually rent an office.
Right.
I've completely moved out of. I do have a spare room that is technically my office at home, but except for today, because I'm having this chat with you, I don't ever work here.
Right.
I did about, I can't remember how long I ended up doing. It's either 6 or 9 months I did at home. And after that point, I couldn't do it anymore, not because of the fact of isolation or not talking to people. I had plenty of people to talk to, like I was talking to my clients every day. I think for me, it's just having those boundaries. Like it is a waste. It's less efficient to travel to an office 100%, right? Because I go into the centre of Bournemouth. That's where my office is. But it's something about that journey that just puts me into work mode. I can, as I walk out the door, I shut the door and I'm then going to work and I'm like in work mode. And then when I come home, I shut the door and then, until my daughter goes to bed, I'm in, I'm trying not to think about work. I'm trying not to think about, the pull requests that I've got to do tomorrow, and the work that I've got to do tomorrow. Because it's all planned out, because you could go, what I'll do is I'll do that pull request tonight. That'll save me an hour in the morning. And then I'll wake up at 10. Do you know what I mean? Or I'll start work at 10. And that's really good when you need to do that, right? Like you've got an appointment or you've got a delivery or, you want to be at an event for somebody. That's really good to have that flexibility. But I think, for me anyway, I have to have that defined schedule of work. Otherwise it would just be turned into, working, 24 hours a day. And a big thing that I've put in place for me is I don't code in the evenings anymore. Like I can have my laptop but no code. Okay. So that's my one. I don't have many rules, but that's one of my rules is that I don't code in the evenings unless it's an emergency, obviously, and I've got to get something out the door. But those don't really happen that often anymore. But what I'll do is I'll do other things. Like I might want to sort out all the other fluff that comes with freelancing.
There's a lot of fluff that you have to deal with.
All the other stuff, you know what I mean? All the, because it is, these things take time. If you want to create a social account and brand it and do all of those things or work on your own website, if you go to apptimise.co.uk now, there's absolutely nothing there because it's not really a priority for me at the moment. I don't really need it, but it's things like that I would work on in the evening, and working on copy for that website and testing things on that front. I set myself a little goal each evening to get something done, but nothing too big in effect, because I know that battle, that's for sure. Because I'm not really one. I do like watching TV, but I feel bad if I've watched too much TV, right? Like if I just watch Netflix all night, I'm just I don't feel productive.
No.
Right, so I have to do something.
No I like the idea of putting boundaries on either side of the day. That does sound sensible.
It can be a bit, and I do break those boundaries, do you know what I mean, all the time when I want to. I'm not super strict about them, but I just try and get trying to get that balance as much as possible, because there is this temptation to do more than what you should.
I think I think it's I get addicted with work in the sense of I'm busy and therefore I want to be more busy, Okay, let's talk about Apptimise before I start digging myself a hole. So you mentioned .NET. Is that the language that you specialize in?
Yeah, so I had a bit of a change in my career, my programming career, should I say. So I did old .NET, back, ASP.NET, web forms, before, .NET was cool. It's not really that cool, but it is cooler now than it was.
Yeah.
And then I sort of moved more into mobile development. So I learned Objective-C.
Okay.
I bought my first Mac.
Yay.
That happened for a long time. I am both a Mac and a PC user. I have a Mac Mini now.
Cool.
But yeah, so I learned Objective-C. I did a lot of mobile work. I used a platform called Accelerator Titanium.
Hey, yes. I use that too.
Yeah, love it. Great.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. I then did move on to React Native because that was the cool kid on the block but Accelerator Titanium is still amazing. And it was way ahead of anything. The best thing that Accelerator did on that platform, well, Titanium moved to Accelerator, didn't it? Or it got bought, or I can't remember because there's the open source.
There's the open source
version. Yeah. And then it's now Axway, isn't it? I think it's a completely different product. But yeah, so I did that. And that was the first, I think personally, that was the first proper cross-platform that worked properly, right? Because we had PhoneGap, didn't we?
Yeah.
And that was not a good way. That was not a good. It didn't have the native feel, did it? It wasn't compiled down to native. It was just a website wrapped in an app.
That's
and
right. Yeah.
you could feel it. And it gave cross-platform development a really bad name. And I can remember the back and forwards trying to convince people that it was like a hybrid approach where it was built down to native. And so I used that. I did a few projects in that, really enjoyed that. And the good part of what I'd already learned is I'd already learned like mobile iOS provisioning, deploying to the App Store is quite possibly one of the most complicated parts of iOS app development, right?
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Before we had Fastlane and all of that sort of stuff to accelerate things.
Yeah.
So I did a few cross-platform apps in that, and then we moved on to React Native because one of my clients wanted it done in React Native. So from that, I actually learned React the wrong way, not the usual way. It's like web down to mobile, but I went mobile back up to web. So I did that, and I did. I've always done a little bit of PHP here and there, a lot of. There's still, in my opinion, no good CMS for .NET. So Drupal and WordPress, I've done quite a few Drupal WordPress projects over the years because they're just great content management systems. And they're extensible, they're open source, all of those good things. So now, now I primarily do, so through one of my contracts and my roles that I did, I moved more back into .NET and Azure. Now that, Microsoft has moved to this service-based business where, they're gone from licensing. They're like, right, we're going to give you MySQL, cloud hosted, managed, and you don't have to do anything about it. That's, their world now. And a lot of our clients for that were local government and bigger businesses. So one thing that I really learned in those environments was that they didn't want the ops overhead of managing infrastructure, right? So if you can say to an ops team in a larger corporation, just add me to your Azure tenant, and everything's managed by Microsoft, and blah blah blah. So Apptimise is .NET and Azure. But one of the big sort of areas that I've done a lot of work in recently is the Power Platform. So Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power BI, and in those sorts of areas. So cool. These completely, SaaS solutions for problems, that like very little bespoke development, more consultancy, more configuration. But again, I still do a load of bespoke application development work. That's the core of what we do. But more and more businesses are moving to that. Cool. It's not like, I'm not saying that bespoke application development is dead. There's, low code and no code solutions are great, but they don't fit every single niche and every single,
and they can only go so far, right?
Correct. Yeah. And I think one of the good ways for freelancers and consultants that Microsoft position their products is they're not really good enough. They require people to come in and configure them, right? And they do a lot out of the box, but they're still, like, for instance, with Power BI, which is a way to visualize data from different data sources. You can write custom visualizations. You can theme it. You can, out of the box, it looks mediocre at best, and it's like a self-service tool. So a non-technical person should be able to use it. A lot of people call it like the PowerPoint for data visualization. So you can drag on tables and things like that. Okay. Now, in a bespoke world, visualizing tables worth of data is trivial, like as in it's, grab it from the database and then render it out however you want to. But these systems allow people to self-serve, like, their own reports. So finance people use it, finance departments use it to visualize their Excel spreadsheets, for instance. So they don't change their own business processes. No. Now, in a bespoke world, we'd say, okay, we'll build you a system. You upload your Excel spreadsheets and I will visualize them out on the front end for you. But again, that requires IT, doesn't it? That requires infrastructure team and all of that sort of stuff. So these teams that want these pieces of software now look to these like solution, these software based systems. And sometimes it doesn't need to look perfect. So the default Power BI out of the box is absolutely fine for them. So it's, So I live in like this bespoke, but also like this software, like, sales world as well, where it's just but less development work and more configuration of the platform.
Sure.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing this for in Apptimise?
So Apptimise is just over a year old now. I still do loads of bespoke application development. Like all the people that I've worked with before know me for my mobile app development and my .NET, bespoke app development. So I still do tons of that. Apptimise is more of it's more of an evolution of me, really. Right. To make it more of a real business and its own identity, not just me.
Gotcha. Yeah.
To turn it into something that is bigger than just me, because I've been a freelancer, like, by myself for a long time. And one thing I've really learned is I like having people around me. So it would be really nice to have a niche technology consultancy. Like, we're not talking this big, like, integrated agency that does marketing and social and all of those things. Just a bunch of nerds working on really cool projects, for cool clients. And that's what we all want, right? Sounds good. So I think that's it for me. But a lot of clients won't just hire a freelancer. So it has to be this, this entity that is not just one person, right? Because a lot of people are worried about, what if Sam goes away? What if Sam gets hit by a bus? That's a concern for these sorts of people. So yeah,
definitely agree with that.
So
how do you find your clients? Has it changed since you started getting the freelance clients? Are you doing different things?
No, not really. I've got no website. This is terrible for me to say, considering I build these things all day. So my freelance website, like if you go to samford.co.uk, is down at the moment. It hasn't been up for a long time. And there I just used to have a landing page with literally just a logo and like 3 links, one to email, one to LinkedIn, and one to GitHub or whatever. And that used to get me like quite a good. And I only did that just so that I'd be on Google if you were to happen to search for a freelance developer in Dorset. Do you know what I mean? And and so, but I didn't at that time. I didn't really need to do it, right? Because for me anyway, when I started, I had this like list of, and I still have a list of this for Apptimise as well, like all the things that I need to make, like my business cards, your letterheaded paper, your signatures, and all of that sort of stuff. And I actually I was more focused on actually doing the work, and then that all got pushed to the side, really. And I think from there it just sort of snowballed from referral to referral, because those if you were referred by somebody, let's say one of your potential clients had a mutual friend and your friend introduced you to that person, there is no better There is no better referral than that, because, somebody of authority to that person has recommended you and you've just got to deliver, right? Yeah. And that's where that repeat business comes from. And so a lot of it is like inter-agency, like other agency will bring me in as a consultant, ask us to do a project. Apptimise is still really small. It's just me and my wife. My wife is now helping me. She comes from sort of a corporate finance background. So she like adds all of that, like, that ops and finance element to it. She also does project management for me. So it's really to optimize, get the most out of my technical time. So she takes away a lot of my admin. I say admin work, but that admin work I would say is as important. That's not work that doesn't need to be done. It's just I would be doing that in the evenings. If I didn't have somebody, because as a freelancer, you always want to try and, you shouldn't, but you're always wanting to maximize those hours that you can bill, right? So if you want to work a 40-hour week, you want to bill 40 hours a week, right? So it's like, well, when are you going to do your bookkeeping? Okay, I'll do that on a Saturday morning, or I'll do that in the evening, and then that eats into your personal time, and it's all about this burnout relationship. So so Apptimise is still really small. It's just an identity around me, but the idea is that I work for Apptimise, and Apptimise is its own thing, its own entity in not just me, sort of thing. And it's not, all of my clients all know the size of Apptimise. It's not to make it seem like bigger than it is or to deceive anybody, but it's just to realize that it's not just one person. Like it is, there's multiple people working on those projects. And like, because I have got that, project management element, and I have other people helping me, it adds like legitimacy to the whole process, right? Like, because I don't, things are like, the project management system is updated every day. I don't accidentally forget anything, and there's more structure around everything.
Yeah, I get that. So, what's in the difference between consultant and developer in your view? Because you've used those terms, bespoke development and consultancy. Yeah,
I think for me, one thing that's really changed is when I marketed. I think it's just a job title, to be totally honest with you. I don't think it's inherently like developers don't do this, or software consultants or architects, do that. I think it's just the way that people, like for me as a freelancer before, is I would engage with a team that has already got a technical presence or understanding, right? So, I would be put into a development team or with another developer, or with an agency that, already knows that they need a .NET developer or a PHP developer or whatever. But as a consultant, you're there to advise what the best solution to the problem is, right? Not just for the technical team, like in terms of technical architecture, how should things be built, like as a more senior architect sort of position, but also to understand that like Power BI might not be the right thing for a business. It might need a bespoke development build, or it might need something that I don't even offer, so at that point, and that's one thing, turning away work, that could be a whole video like in itself, right? But having that understanding of what the actual business needs are. And a lot of the time you're one step removed from that because you're working for a client who's then, contracted. So you just get a list of jobs to do and you don't have to worry about whether the tasks that you're working through are actually right for the project, right? And I would see that, when I'm developing, like, I'm a senior developer. Right. That's what I'm doing. I'm just working for a task list. And then there's this other part of my role, which is like, no, you shouldn't use .NET for this. You should build this in Moodle because Moodle's got all this functionality, right? Out of the box, or X, Y, and Z. And that also sometimes means that you don't get that work because they want to go with like a certified partner in whatever that technology is. So
is it right to say that you become more of an advisor?
Yeah, but that is such a small part of like my role, right? It's because most of the time that decision has already been made by somebody. It's only when you get to a company like I say a small company, because bigger companies have IT departments and they usually have technical people there, right? Mm-hmm. Unless they're like some massive brand with not a lot of head office, but and then you've got these really small companies that I'm not talking about startups. I'm talking about sort of these smaller industrial park sort of businesses that are more, they're not really that technically abled at the moment, but they want all the benefit of that, right? They want to be able to automate their processes, but they don't have the money to hire an IT team, do they? So when you go into a place like that and somebody's got no technical knowledge or anything, they're gonna listen to whatever you're saying to them, right? Like when if I said to them, you need this built in this language, they're going to go, okay, cool. I don't even know what that means. Is it gonna do what I want it to do? And I think that's where the consultancy comes from, that advising. But also with that, it's like a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because you need to advise for your own personal, because you want it built in the technology that you're writing in, right? Because that's what you do, and that would make most commercial sense. But also the longevity for the business, because I have done, I've been in that situation before in the past where it's like, we shouldn't really do it like this. We should do it like that. But, that's a moral quandary, isn't it? Because do you advise the client in a different way? If your client came to you and said, right, we definitely want to do it in, I don't know, Fortran or whatever. And you're like, okay, I'm the best Fortran expert on the planet, but actually the right thing is to do it in PHP. And it's like, at that point, you should advise them to do it in PHP. But, but if you were just a developer, you'd be like, right, okay, let's get started.
So a distinction I make is like, if someone is really into a framework, regardless of what the project is, if they just want to do it in a framework, they will do it in a framework. They won't take the time to to listen and discover the actual needs of the business. They will just go, I'm a Symfony developer or a Laravel developer, I'm just going to build it in that.
And that's the thing. I love frameworks, right? Like as in, and I'm not, if you're building something even bespoke nowadays, like how much actual bespoke development are you really doing, right? You are generally using a framework to build on top of something. But, it is that, I think, some people can be quite narrow viewed in only their technology. Even though I like to specialize on one thing, I've got quite a breadth of knowledge in terms of what I've done before, so I can see.
But the thing is,
what's out there?
I think the limitations and where the technology can get to.
Correct.
The confines of what of what that technology can do.
Yeah, and it's always about probing. This is phase one. Yeah. Like let's all think that this is going to go well. Yeah. What is phase two and what is phase three? That's what we're looking at. We're not looking at this first set of functionality. We're looking at how we can build on top of this, because these people spend a lot of money on these systems, right? They're horrendously expensive because of the amount of time that's involved, and everybody needs to be compensated for their time correctly. So it has to be an asset to their business. Sure. It has to be something that it's not just you're building this one thing. It's like it's going to go to here and then it's going to go to there. Yeah. And I think that is the difference. But I think developer and consultant are like the same thing. I think we're talking about more of a, it depends what system you use for like your seniority levels of your developers. We're talking like that's the job of a senior architect or principal developer. That's looking at that higher level, those higher level problems. Because and again, I know technical people that are they love to just build, right? Like loads of technical mates that never want to be managers, never want to own their own business. They just want to make stuff all day long. But they're still, grown up enough, and they understand that they're working for a business and what the challenges of that business are and what the objectives of that business are.
Yeah. So you say you focus on .NET and the other technologies, Azure and so forth, bit of React here and there. What kind of industries do you work in?
It can be varied, really. Anywhere from I've done quite a lot in sort of healthcare, and that sort of industry, printing, news, all over the place, really. Right. It's not, I wouldn't really say I have a niche in any one industry. Like, I am a React developer that works for coal mining companies, do you know what I mean, or whatever the random. I've been quite all over the place. I've been in defense, private, public healthcare, and then anything from small startups to bigger sort of SMEs and all of that sort of stuff. So I would say I have a really varied portfolio of different companies that I've worked for, and I also I've never really worked for like a big company, because they don't really resonate with me, like in the way I have had opportunities to join bigger organizations, and that's not really, so I kind of find that because I don't want to go and work for a really big organization, I kind of seem to find clients that are smaller rather than bigger. Does that make sense? Or I'm talking to a lot of these massive companies are just loads of little companies sort of talking together right now. And I think, one of the big shifts that we've seen, and, I've already sort of mentioned it about these, IT teams and these ops teams, which are kind of being phased out, if I, want to call it that, right? You're looking at local councils who are reducing their headcount in IT because of cost and all of those things. So they're looking to the cloud to, instead of paying an administrator to administer a SQL server, like, you could just pay Microsoft to do that for you, right? And get value out of it that way. So there is massive opportunity there for, smaller freelancers, because that work still needs to be done, and there's less people in the house to do it now. They look, on a project basis and a cost basis, don't they? They go, we've got X amount of money to do this. Let's get somebody in to do it. And single freelancers and single developers will always be cheaper than agencies. Like, there's no doubt about it. And, resourceful teams will go, okay, we know we're not going to get all the, the insurances and the protections that we have with an agency, but we really like paying half day rate. So let's do that, because some of these people charge silly sums of money.
Oh yeah.
Right. And compared to what, a well-deployed freelancer or consultant or whatever you want to call them, into the same, I would always do it like, if somebody's walking past my door and they walk into an agency, do you know what I mean? It's like, if you just stopped in here, guys, it would be a lot cheaper, and it's that, because some people are charging obscene amounts of money for the same thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Or less even, or less.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, that's it. I think pricing yourself is a minefield in itself, right? Like, it's probably the worst part of the job, even though it's like the most financially rewarding.
Well, that's an episode in itself. How does
that's a whole series?
How does a freelancer go from starting up to where they are now, and the progression and the steps that they make? Yeah, we could talk about that forever.
No, definitely. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. So, is there anything else you wish to add before we wrap up?
No, I don't think so.
Awesome.
I do have one question for you.
Yeah, obviously. Of course. Go for it.
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to ask questions.
No, of course. No, you can.
It's a podcast, but I'm sure we're supposed to ask you questions. How far are you away from your 10,000 subscribers?
Done it today.
Did you?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
About an hour and a half ago. Thank you very much.
How much sort of effort do you think because obviously we see the output of your YouTube, channel, and we see your X amount of minutes of content that you create. Is that something that, do you just have a passion for making videos, or is that one of your avenues for, a commercial avenue for you, or is it just because you just really like making YouTube videos? Do you know what I mean? What's the sort of hidden work that goes into?
There's a lot of hidden work. There's a tremendous amount of work that goes involved. Saturdays, weekends, and evenings and mornings are consumed by things being put on the queues, being encoded and uploaded.
Yeah.
Usually, most evenings, there's something being pushed to some place. But I guess it goes back to the question of how did it all start and what's the motivation to continue, right? Yeah. So I started this out of complete accident. It was actually a recruitment agent who, after university, just mentioned, I wish there was some way of you demonstrating the skills that you know. And this was years ago, and I just thought YouTube would be a great demonstration piece. I didn't even think I was teaching. I just did a YouTube video to promote me, and I don't know why, but I went into the whole education sort of mindset. Yeah. I left it for a while, and then came back to it, and there was lots of questions. And I just discovered the need for it, so I decided to continue it. I mean, there's so much work involved, and I think that getting to 1,000 subscribers was a lot harder than getting it to 10,000. Took me years and years before that happened, but you still got to keep the fire going. No, for sure, because it must be, when you look at other YouTubers and like their insane raging success, do you know what I mean? It must be because there is so much work involved. I suppose from your perspective, there must be times when you think, like, is it worth it? Do you know what I mean? There's been many a times where I've wanted to drop it. Yeah. Okay. Because I was putting too much work into it over the weekends. So with Freelance and with the YouTube, there wasn't anything else. Yeah. And now I've been able to manage my time a little bit better, with more efficient ways of working. So, for example, this podcast here, I will be doing a review. There is certain presets that I've got, which I just have to press a button and then it sorts out the audio. I put it on a queue. I can chop it up quite easily and make some clips out of it. All of this stuff I didn't know when I started. Yeah. So you kind of learn to become more efficient as you progress. But yeah, no, there was a couple of times where I thought I would drop it because of the time constraints. Yeah. And in terms of looking at other YouTubers, so I try not to compare myself, because I know that there's a lot of people out there who are doing amazing stuff, but I think that once you start comparing yourself, you start getting, you can get a little bit down.
Yeah, well, no, that's it, because that would be my first. I don't know, like in my, that's why I think, because I mean, 10,000 subscribers on YouTube is mental to me, right? Like, as in, because I don't have 10,000, I don't have anybody, like, I don't have any subscribers on YouTube. So it seems amazing to me that, like, there's 10,000 people that are actively subscribed to you that, want to see your content, and those things. Yeah. But I can imagine that, if you're putting in hundreds of hours a month potentially, and you're seeing it go up, but I suppose you're seeing the fruits of that labor now, aren't you? Because, it's like an exponential sort of growth. Do you see what I mean?
It was only a few weeks ago I had a conversation with someone out of the blue because of it, and they wanted work. So I'm seeing the benefits from a freelancing perspective for having it. In fact, there are some clients that I have in the States because of it. Yeah. Although you can't easily put a financial figure to it.
No, and I think that's a good point though, that you make there, is there's a lot of stuff that you do try to actively do to make like more money, right? You can be a more efficient programmer or, and do a better job, but there are just some aspects which are just more like pot luck in effect, right? That one of your subscribers happens to be somebody that needs some work doing, and they know you exist because of your YouTube channel or your podcast, and those and that relationship is all about visibility, right? Like, because they wouldn't know about you at all. Had they not watched you on YouTube. So I think that's a really good.
And this is a podcast episode about freelance work. So people will be listening to this and going, "Oh, there's two freelancers talking about different technology."
Definitely, yeah. That's why it works. Yeah, there's no. Well,
you mentioned earlier about marketing oneself. This is my way of marketing myself. This becomes my marketing budget, right? So. Yeah.
And what's great is it's and like you say, you've invested the time, you've got your presets, like when we started this call, you're like, right, I'm going to do this, and then you're ready to go, right? Like, I assume that the first podcast took a lot longer to edit and, to get ready.
Oh yeah, so. It definitely did. It's been a job to try and get the presets working without making the guests sound like they're in a toilet or some bathroom somewhere with the echoes. Yeah, I mean, eventually I would like to get someone in to do the editing for me. Because I just want to create the content.
Yeah.
But yeah.
When that I'm sure it will happen. I think and that's the thing. Yeah, I mean, like you say, if you felt that the first 1,000 was, harder than, 1,000 to 10,000, and that just goes to show
to put in
the trajectory.
To put in perspective, it took about 3 years to get the first 1,000. It took then probably last year we had about 4,500.
Right.
Just in 2019.
So that's a big increase, isn't it?
But it's getting over the hump. It's getting over the hump. And I'm not. You can't take it for granted because you don't know who watches your content, and you don't know why they're watching your content, because they're obviously after some technical knowledge. And if you say the wrong things, or you don't, they haven't got what they needed to get, then they'll unsubscribe. Then
that's it. They'll find somebody else, I suppose. Yeah. How do you decide what content you put out? Do you just pick any subject that you're interested in, or
mostly now it's community driven. So it's not just the YouTube channel. I live code on Twitch, and we have a Discord server. So we've got 100 or so members in there. And they will ask me to create bits and pieces, or they'll just talk about things, and I'll just discover what they're talking about, and do that. And
that's the best way, right? That community is going to drive. Yeah. It's easier for you then, because you're just like, right, okay, I need to make a video about this. You don't have to come up with.
Well, that's it. You start to identify your audience. It becomes more clearer who they are, and to be honest, I know 10,000 sounds fantastic, and it's I'm really happy for it. But if I was just creating content for the Discord channel server, that would be fine. Yeah,
that would be enough.
Yeah. Because you can see, quite, you're exposed to your impact far better than here's a YouTube video. I'm just going to throw it out there, and people don't always comment on it. People might not give you a thumbs up, and what does that really mean? But if someone is actually having a direct conversation with you over Discord because of the thing that you've said, then you know that you've actually had that impact.
Yeah.
So I value that far more than the numbers.
Okay. No, that's really good. No, it's. I think I think if it's the best part about it is that your passion towards it, like that you're, like you said, like it doesn't make like monetary sense, right? Like as in, because it'd be better for you just to find more freelance work to do on a Saturday morning and every single evening, So, and that is, I think that's probably why you have that community, right? Because it's not driven by any financial. There are financial elements to it, like you get might get introduced to a client or things like that, but it's more driven by that just building something, right? And in effect a community. So
this becomes my legacy.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, it was lovely speaking to you, Sam. Really, really good to talk with you. How can people reach you?
The best way, I'm not too social. Well, I should be more social, so I'm going to talk about things.
For it.
You can find me on my website, apptimise.co.uk. Hopefully by the time you're listening to this, there is a website there, and everything is all like that. I will actually, tonight, I'm going to go and update that website with all my contact details. Right. But yeah, I'm on Twitter, SamFootDev on Twitter, and Twitter is really the place that I go. I don't really go to. I do go onto Instagram and stuff like that, but Twitter's really the place where I follow everybody. So that's probably the best place to get me. So wonderful.
Cool. Now there is one other question that I ask people, that everyone on the show. It's changed in this season, and this is: if you can spend time learning something that isn't coding, what would it be and why? There could be more than one.
Right, so this, I've got to think about this one, because I think about this quite a lot, right? When thinking about what am I going to do when I retire, right? Because I can't really see myself retiring, but I assume I'm going to do it at some time. And one thing I'd really like to do is just have like a little woodworking shop where I make stuff. Right, just for no real reason, not for any monetary value, but just to like pass the time, because I think it's like building, but it would get me off computers. But one aspect so there's that, and also one aspect that I really lack is languages. Like I'm no good at other languages, right? I was never really into learning French at school or anything like that. I got people that I know that can speak multiple languages, and it really annoys me that they're so good at it. So yeah, languages and randomly woodworking. That's, I think, a passion that I don't have because I live in town. I don't have the space for it, but I'd love to have like a little like woodworking shop. I don't know what I'd make.
Yeah, I was going to ask you
what I'm going to make. Like, I don't know. I've got no clue. I think it's just to get off the computer more than anything else. Yeah. So nothing. I do like, I do have like my sort of nerdy side and the computer aspect and all of that sort of stuff. But I think I'm going to have something that's completely segregated from that.
Wonderful. Brilliant. Well, thank you ever so much for coming on the show, Sam. It's been great to speak to you.
Yeah.
And thank you ever so much, everybody who's watching on the YouTubes and listening on the podcast. Happy coding, everyone. I'll see you again next time. Cheers. Bye.